everyone. Welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And every single part of me today wants to start by singing, I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. Because today is 10 years of living in this country. Well, actually, actually, that rhymes really well, but is not true. Today actually marks 10 years of me being an American citizen. I've actually been here since I was 5, so I've been living here for 23 years. So lyrics there, I don't know, just pulling that out of my ass, but you get the point. Anyway, I'm very extra grateful to be here today. I'm calling today my 10-year America-versary, and if you're in the listening audience, please come on over to YouTube, Rumble, Spotify video, just to see my awesome star jacket, because I wore it today, just to celebrate. It's super cute. I just want to say that I'm so proud to be American. I'm so thankful for the freedoms that I have here. I love this country so much, so let's preserve the culture of this country one podcast episode at a time. Now, it feels very odd to come on and praise our military and our freedoms while the first thing I want to say is dumping on a veteran. But I don't know if you guys have seen this Dan Crenshaw clip where he said he wants to kill Tucker Carlson. But we got to talk about it. And by the way, if you're just here for the stories or to watch Joy Reid cry, remember you could always use the chapters feature to skip through and find the stories that you want to listen to. But okay, if you have not heard about this Dan Crenshaw drama, here's what happened. So GB News, which is a British news outlet, put out a segment. I believe this must have taken place at CPAC, which is like a conservative convention center based on the video. But you can see that Dan Crenshaw, who is a representative out of Texas, is sitting with a guy named Steve Eddington, and they're talking about Tucker Carlson, and Dan Crenshaw basically says that he doesn't like how Tucker talks about certain political causes, specifically how he deals with Russia and Tucker's alleged praise of Russia. And after this video or interview went out, Steve Eddington tweeted, so this is the journalist who is interviewing Dan Crenshaw, tweeted, after our interview, I asked Dan Crenshaw if he ever met Tucker Carlson. He said, quote, I would kill him if I saw him. I laughed it off. This is the journalist. Dan Crenshaw then said, no, seriously, I would kill him. Watch my interview below where I ask if he is a, quote, neocon. Okay, so he's kind of creating hype, but nowhere in this interview that is put out, the GB News interview, is there a part where Dan Crenshaw says, you know, I'd kill Tucker Carlson. That's not what it is. It's really just a conversation about, you know, Tucker Carlson and his visit to Moscow. So then Marjorie Taylor Greene, the bombastic representative from Georgia, blanked there for a second, tweeted, Dan Crenshaw, did you threaten to kill my friend Tucker Carlson? At this moment, I was like, what in the world is going on? How is this what our politicians are spending time doing? But Dan Crenshaw responded and said, LOL, no, period. Now, what I'm about to show you is difficult to hear. So if you're in the listening audience, listen for these words. If I ever met him, I'll kill him. I'm about to turn the audio up a little bit. It's going to be a little bit louder than I am right now. So here it comes, because this is what Dan Crenshaw said with a hot mic on him right to Steve Eddington.
Thank you.
Have you ever met Tucker?
We've talked a lot. If I ever meet him, I'll probably kill him. He's the worst person.
Look at how easy that was for a politician to lie right to your face. Well, lie through Twitter, but still, lying nonetheless. LOL, no, never said that. Also, here's a receipt of you saying exactly that. This is why I have such a tough time believing politicians, ever liking politicians. I just believe that if you get into this game, you are a liar of some sort. It's just how I feel. And I feel like a lot of people also feel that way. Now, I understand part of the sentiment here with Dan Crenshaw, because I don't deny that Dan Crenshaw loves his country, right? Like, he stepped on an IED, he lost his eye in combat. You know, you don't give up yourself in a way to a country that you don't love. But I do think that love, when you're talking about it in a grand scheme of things, includes loving something wholly. It means loving something with its flaws. And that includes your country. What Tucker Carlson does a really good job of is he loves America while simultaneously acknowledging that it has a ton of flaws. And that's really the difference between the new right, the MAGA right, and the left, right? The neocons, the conservative, quote unquote, conservatives in the middle, and the Blue Dog Democrats as well, they really just don't want to admit that there's anything wrong with the country. It's why you see resistance to Doge. It's just why you see a litany of resistance to change. Whereas the new right and MAGA right has no problem admitting that there are aspects and elements of America that are wrong. We just want to, we love America so much, we want to make it better. Whereas the left goes, oh, we are acknowledging all of these flaws and we want to burn America down, right? The neocons have this serious problem where they think that acknowledging problems in America makes you a leftist. But the new right is actually very moderate on this in the fact that they believe there's a bunch of problems, but we love our country so much, true love, we are willing to fight for it to make it better. And that is exactly what I think Tucker Carlson does, yet it still upsets the neocons. And yes, I'll agree, sometimes I listen to Tucker Carlson and I don't like what he has to say. Part of that is because I'm protective of the country that I love, and I don't want to hear that there's anything wrong with it. But that doesn't make Tucker's criticism wrong. Again, I will admit that there are some things that Tucker Carlson says that I'm like, that crossed a line for me personally, not my favorite. Doesn't mean I think he's a less valuable voice or someone worth killing, okay? You don't say that. Also, PSA for Dan Crenshaw, that was just playing right into the left's hand on the idea that the right is a bunch of fascists, wanting to kill people who ideologically oppose the government. It's a bad look. It's a bad look. But please sound off on your thoughts in the comments. Here's what we've got on the show for today. I got a 3-part update on New York City for you, a little about the Eric Adams ending the Migrant hotel stuff, as well as an update from New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Plus, come on, we got to talk about Joy Reid and the massive upheaval happening over at MSNBC, as well as a lawsuit that was settled between NBC and MSNBC as well. Plus, I want to clear up some confusion about a judge's ruling on deportation. And bonus, at the end, we will play a round of our segment called Is It Real or Is It Satire? Because there's this viral TikTok theory that seriously has me wondering if what I was watching was satire or not. So, without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Today's show is brought to you by my merch line, Based. I'm an independent journalist, and the best way to support this show is by purchasing a hat, a hoodie, or the new Based Not Basic tote, or really any item from the Apparel collection. Instead of asking you guys for donations to fund my independent journalism, my business partner and I created a line of merch called Based Apparel. Based means you're the opposite of woke. It means you're based in logic, you're based in truth. You get it. Head over to basedinlogic.com to check out our latest apparel. My personal favorite right now is the Based two-tone shirt. And remember, when you buy merch, you are directly supporting this show. Thank you, friends. I have been really adamant about following the New York City Eric Adams trial and kind of everything illegal immigration in New York City, kind of to the annoyance of some of you, but I really just believe wholeheartedly it's a good insight into how the Trump administration is planning to take action in some of the more stubborn states like California, like Illinois, like Colorado, especially when it comes to immigration. So I put together this kind of like 3-in-1 story for you because what's happening in New York, I think, is just a foray into what we're going to start to see across the country. So this is what I'm going to call part A of the story, which is that Eric Adams announced that the Roosevelt Hotel, which became a migrant shelter in May of 2023, that hotel will cease operations for housing migrants in the coming months. Part of this is just very logical. Last year, there was an average of 4,000 migrants arriving each week in New York City, and now in 2025, it's averaged about 350 arrivals per week. So logically speaking, we're not, the shelter use, the pace that we were needing to shelter migrants, it's not at the same pace as these mass deportations are happening. These deportations are clearly incentivizing people to not come to America. So, of course, New York City doesn't need all the migrant shelters anymore. Great. Now, the migrant facilities, it's not just the Roosevelt Hotel that's being shut down. It's one of 53 shelters. And they say tent-based facilities. That's just tents on the street. So a bunch of tent cities and migrant shelters are going to be closed by the end of the summer, or the beginning of the summer. My bad. Beginning of the summer, according to Eric Adams. So after that announcement comes in part B, this is odd. This is weird that Eric Adams announces he's suing the Trump administration over its clawback of federal funds designated for migrant shelters. So you'll remember that Elon Musk's Doge found that $80 million had been designated from FEMA and other federal agencies to help fund migrant shelters, migrant food, and luxury hotels for migrants all across New York City. This was like a huge story 2 weeks ago. We definitely talked about it on the podcast. Okay, so now you got Eric Adams saying he's suing Trump. He's suing the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Chrissy Noem and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent for clawing back all of those funds. Now, I get what Eric Adams is doing here, right? He's fighting an uphill battle as he's getting calls for resignation. And so he's fighting for New Yorkers who will inevitably have to shoulder the tax burden of at least $7 million that the city already spent on this migrant crisis. Now, in my experience, you don't pay for something like the migrant crisis until you got the money in your coffers. Why were they doling out so much money they didn't have? And I know it's easier said than done. We're talking about housing people. What are you going to do? Like, leave them on the street? I understand it's difficult, but at the same time, New Yorkers and the state government, or the city government in this case, need to be held to fiscal responsibility. If I don't get a paycheck and I go and put $2,000 on my credit card when I only have $100, I have to deal with the ramifications of my problems. This is yet another indication that these cities have no idea how to manage a budget. And if we as Americans are held to a certain standard of that, I don't understand why the city is not held to the standards of that. The voters voted for you. You don't know how to manage a budget. Therefore, the voters voted for someone who don't know how to manage a budget. Therefore, they have to deal with the consequences. I get what Eric Adams is trying to do. He's trying to fix the fact that he effed up. But I don't feel bad for you. And I certainly don't feel bad. I mean, I'd love to feel bad for New Yorkers, but they don't really do anything to help themselves. So we have that element of it. Also, there's the element of the quid pro quo dilemma. So if you haven't heard about the quid pro quo drama because you live in insane society, there are leftists out there, specifically the commentators over at MSNBC, who nonstop yap about this alleged quid pro quo. Basically, Eric Adams had a corruption case against him, and leftists believe that the Trump administration came in and told Eric Adams that they would drop the corruption case that the DOJ was investigating him on as long as he cooperated with ICE officials because New York is a sanctuary city. To me, this whole story, part B of this story, where Eric Adams comes in and sues Donald Trump, to me this confirms that the quid pro quo was always drama hyped up by the left. There was no quid pro quo. It was always speculation to believe. However, people ran with it because they wanted to believe in their confirmation bias, and here we're kind of watching that unravel. And that is where part C of the story comes in, which is Governor Kathy Hochul. So she has been the kingpin of this Eric Adams drama. She's been kind of floating the theory of the quid pro quo, threatening to oust Eric Adams, threatening to call on him to resign, and then ultimately backing away. No one was saying there was a quid pro quo there. But something fishy is going on with her very clearly after her lieutenant governor, Antonio Delgado, announced he will not be seeking re-election with Kathy Hochul. So people are now speculating that because Hochul didn't push further for Adams to be removed from New York City as the mayor, this then sparked her Lieutenant Governor Delgado to consider running against her. Now, nothing is official, and this actually may be very successful for him. As soon as I saw this, I just wanted to know the answer. Like, was this worth it for him? Like, is there even a shot? I feel like, although Kathy Hochul, in my opinion, is a moron, she's kind of popular in New York. But I went and did some digging in terms of the numbers, and a new Marist College poll found that only 26% of New Yorkers approve of Eric Adams' job performance, and a whopping 69% of people believe he should resign, which would indicate that Delgado stepping down from this lieutenant governor position at the end of his term and running against her sounds like a good idea if Kathy Hochul not going after Eric Adams is so wildly unpopular. But I have been posting about this controversy online for the last week and a half or so. I kind of made it one of the bigger stories I've been following. And so many of you guys have said that you have not made up your mind about whether you think that Eric Adams is guilty or not. And this made me start to really analyze the situation. I think the Democrats are going to have a really tough time in this gubernatorial race because the polling shows one thing. It shows that Eric Adams is unpopular. But a politicized justice system will inevitably make Adams more popular by default because Americans hate seeing institutions weaponized against people over their politics. I think that sounds reminiscent of a similar story. You know, it sounds like how everything played out. A huge role in Trump's victory last year. Democrats don't understand how they lost. And I think that kind of includes Delgado. I don't think this Get Adam crusade is going to play as well as they think it will, because it certainly didn't play out well when it came to Trump. And this is every indication that this is kind of similar. Anyway, I want to get on to our next story because, come on, this is all I wanted to talk about today. Joy Reid has been fired from her job. That is no underreported story. However, there are these underlying calls from people online blaming racism, sexism, and a war against the free press, yes, for these job losses over at MSNBC. So just to prove that free speech isn't dead, I want to show you actual statements that Joy Reid made on her show that didn't get her fired, just to quell the naysayers. Where to begin? So in December of 2017, we discovered a series of homophobic posts on Joy Reid's personal blog called The Reid Report, written between 2007 and 2009. They reemerged in which she expressed disgust about men kissing and spouted off about gay marriage. That didn't get her in any trouble. Then in September of 2020, Reid accused President Trump of, quote, radicalizing his supporters. Similarly to how we talk about the way Muslims act, the strange wording even prompted fellow lefty and squad member Representative Ilhan Omar to accuse Joy Reid of Islamophobia. Then we have in 21 Joy Reid claiming conservatives would trade tax cuts for the ability to openly say the N-word, because apparently all we want is tax cuts and to be racist. Not true. January of 22 on her nightly show, Joy Reid called for the unvaccinated to get taxed or fined. Then in 22, former NFL player Jack Brewer threatened to sue Joy Reid for defamation after she likened children involved in his charity program to child abuse, which is insane. In April of 22, she suggested that Elon Musk misses apartheid because he bought Twitter. In November of 22, she took to blasting the, quote, fairy tale holiday of Thanksgiving. Now, if you know me, you know I don't like Thanksgiving either, but we don't like it for different reasons. And then this one might be a personal favorite for me. On July 6, 2023, Joy Reid claimed she was too scared to leave her house on July 4th because America is awash with guns. It goes on, too. She said some pretty crazy shit. January 24, responding to Trump's victory in the Iowa caucuses, Reid condemned the white Christians who support him. Days after the first assassination attempt against Trump, Reid suggested the shooting amounted to him bearing the consequences of promoting political violence. She basically said Trump deserved it. And then she also said on TikTok that black people would look really weird and lonely for not voting for Kamala Harris in the election year. So saying, if you're a free-thinking black person, you're going to be a total weirdo freak, because that's a cool thing to say, right? Also on TikTok, Joy Reid said she would vote for Biden even if he was in a coma, and called voting against Trump a vote to, quote, keep Hitler out of the White House. Now, I brought all of that up because she was allowed to say all of that, and she didn't get in trouble with the network over this. The truth of the matter is that America didn't respond well to her crappy commentary. She didn't get fired for her speech. She didn't get fired for her race. She got fired for being bad at her job. And something about that is very comforting because to me it showcases that meritocracy really is back, even at MSNBC. But more than creating an unwatchable show, she's clearly not testing well with audiences. And I think that's ultimately what got her fired. I remember when I was at the Daily Wire slated to do the comment section, and they test the audience with you. Like they try to figure out which demographic they're trying to target. And if the Daily Wire was doing that, I can only assume that a massive network like MSNBC is doing that as well. They're trying to test you with it. They do it with me on Newsmax, right? They try to figure out where you test well with the audiences so that you can be put in the right time slot, the right positions, talking about the right subjects and whatnot. And she's clearly, Joy Reid, not testing well among a litany, if not the majority of these audiences. Now, I think that I really believe that to my core because there are a bunch of demotions taking place across MSNBC. Joy Reid very well could have got demoted, but she got fired. To me, that indicates something is very wrong, whether it be not testing well with audiences or not being a good team player at MSNBC. One thing that I found, maybe this is a hypothetical, the panel shows are really big right now on cable news networks. It's kind of a rating hit, to be honest. I watch CNN's Abby Phillips. That show comes to mind because they put a panel together of a conservative, liberals, and they kind of duke it out, they go at it. And it's fun to watch. We've commented on some of those videos on this show, on my YouTube channel. It's a good concept. And so I think that that is what is going to be popular on MSNBC as it tries to make a comeback. And Joy Reid has made so much terrible content, made so many awful comments that it's basically impossible for her to sit at a table and have a substantive conversation with others. Because conservatives are just going to pull up and do exactly what I did. Just pull up an arsenal of bad things she said to delegitimize taking her or her points seriously. And so I don't think that free speech got her fired. That's just not true. But I do think it had massive consequences that were detrimental for her career. I really always say I thank people that told me to shut up when I was young in my career, and I don't have those guardrails anymore, and maybe I need them. But I'm very thankful for that because without guardrails, you start to sound like a psychopath like Joy Reid. But speaking of MSNBC hosts, I want to talk about this next story, which is that NBC Universal privately settled a defamation lawsuit filed by a doctor that MSNBC hosts allegedly slandered. His name is Dr. Mahendra Arman. He is a Georgia gynecologist, and he was accused in 2020 of performing unnecessary hysterectomies on women in ICE detention facilities. So the allegations were initially put out by NBC and then echoed by MSNBC hosts Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Chris Hayes. These anchors dubbed Dr. Arman the uterus collector. Investigations in this whole trial period, including a Senate subcommittee report, found no evidence to support MSNBC or NBC's claims that Dr. Arman performed unnecessary hysterectomies. In 2021, the doctor sued NBC Universal for defamation after these investigations came out. The case was actually headed for trial in April, and to avoid further legal proceedings and further dumping of the insides of what was happening, similar to what happened with CNN, NBC has settled the case. The terms of the settlement have not been disclosed. I don't know if they ever will be disclosed. Technically, I should be a good journalist and let you know that a settlement is not considered an admission of guilt. However, a federal judge did rule that MSNBC hosts had made 39 verifiably false statements about this doctor. And that same judge said that a jury could reasonably conclude that the network acted with actual malice after reviewing the evidence. So I thought, well, okay, since this isn't going to actual trial, let's have a very brief Chrissy's court. And I'm going to read the most damning evidence, and I just want to hear from you guys whether you would find this evidence suspicious as a member of Chrissy's court. A little background just so you know who all the players are. So NBC Universal reporters Julia Ainsley, Jacob Soboroff, and Danielle Silva published an article in 2020, and we'll just call them collectively the journalists. The journalists published an article in 2020 based on claims by a whistleblower named Dawn Wooten. She's a former nurse at the Georgia ICE facility in question. And Wooten identified Dr. Mahendra Amin as the uterus collector and alleged that Amin was leaving women, quote, bruised and performed unnecessary procedures, including hysterectomies. I remember when this story was absolutely massive. It was taking over everything, and I was trying to figure out whether it was real or not. It was very difficult to understand. However, there are internal emails that have since been published from the lawsuit. And this is the one that I found to be the most interesting. In one exchange, senior deputy head of standards, the head of standards, the person that is holding the bar for the standards of journalism at NBC Universal, his name is Chris Scholl. He hesitated to publish the initial article. Good job, Chris. Good job, Chris. He said in an email that the whistleblower, Wooten, quote, provides no evidence to back up her claims. She's just making allegations, and any old crazy person can do that. He said, quote, the whistleblower has no direct knowledge of what she's claiming, is unable to name the doctor involved, if I understood correctly, and we were unable to verify any of it or determine whether there really is a story here. This is, again, Deputy Head of Standards, Chris Scholl. This is a email that was put out in June of 2021, or 2020, sorry. One of the reporters on the initial story responded to Scholl's email that ICE was working on obtaining the numbers of hysterectomies performed at the facility, and ICE told NBC at the time, that they, quote, believe the data will negate her claims. Scholl also said in the call that the doctor, Dr. Amin, had a pretty clean record. However, Scholl approved the story for publication after he felt the reporters obtained enough independent information to verify Wooten's claims according to the June order. The published story was then the basis for subsequent false reporting from Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Chris Hayes. However, there were 39 verifiably false claims in this, so he wasn't really approving anything with certainty. He was just trying to get a story out, or so it seems. As I'm going back and reading this again, I actually kind of feel bad for Nicole Wallace and Rachel Maddow and Chris Hayes, and I would never usually say that, but the head of standards is supposed to be the one approving this. The head of standards is supposed to be someone that you can trust. When you are in a position of hosting, you are supposed to be able to trust your team. And when the standards team fails you in such an epic way, how much of it is even Rachel Maddow's fault when your standards team is doing such a shit job? I have too many opinions to be a lawyer, clearly, but looking at the evidence that I just presented to you in that Federalist article, that MSNBC knew there was a lack of evidence, that ICE had refuted the claims, and that they had privately admitted that Dr. Amin had a clean record. If you were a juror on this trial, would you find MSNBC guilty? Please try to be more unbiased than me and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, court adjourned. If you love this podcast, then you will absolutely love the Underreported Stories Substack. It's an email sent straight to your inbox Monday through Friday. You'll get an in-depth analysis of stories that are underreported, hot takes from me on the biggest news of the day, and Underreported Wrapped, where I'll let you in on personal updates, big news that flew under the radar, and you'll get a few pictures from America's Goodest Boy, my dog, Harper. Check out the link in the description to subscribe for free, and while you're down there, be sure to give this episode a thumbs up or a 5-star review. These next two stories are brought to you by my friends over at Ground News. When I am prepping for today's show, when I'm reading my news day to day, when I'm looking for stories, I trust Ground News. It's an app and a website that combines news from all different sides of the political spectrum to give you the facts and see where the media is perhaps exaggerating, sensationalizing, or even, you guessed it, underreporting news. I mean, Like, come on, guys. Like, it's like they made an app for us. This product is awesome, and it's 100% user-funded, so no corporate bullshit interests. And when you use my link in the description, you'll get 40% off of the Vantage subscription, which is what I pay for out of pocket, and it's totally worth it. Head over to check.ground.news/Chrissy to get informed on the go. So, like I said, used Ground News to help get this story up and running for you guys. Donald Trump's Department of Transportation is investigating California's failed high-speed rail project. The DOT said it may rescind federal funds given to the project under the Biden administration, which awarded the state with $3.1 billion to create a high-speed railway between San Francisco and LA. The project, right now, is on track to cost $128 billion and be 91% smaller than anticipated. So the problem for California is that it's got no clear plan on how to secure the remaining billions of dollars needed to complete this project. So when I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, so the federal government rescinding the grant is likely the very fiscally responsible thing to do, because even if the feds cough up $3.1 billion, that is the tiniest little dent in how much this project is supposed to cost. This project was supposed to be completed back in 2020. It is by both parties considered an abject failure. As of today, only 171 miles of it has even started, not completed, started construction, which is nowhere near the full LA to SF route. By the way, that 171-mile stretch that we're talking about, it's not focusing on the high-demand parts of the state where this would actually be beneficial to saving people time with their commutes or saving people money with gas. No. It's just like rural areas in the Central Valley. It's not actually helping anybody. So then I started getting the phrase from Doge in my mind, right? What is it? End waste, fraud, and abuse of funds. Love it. I don't know if this is fraud. I don't know if this is abuse. That's why we have an investigation going on. But is it waste? 100%. It is 100% government waste of funds to send out billions to a project with no timeline, no clear-cut plan, and literally no funding. If the private sector, by the way, is not investing in this, I think that should just be like, woo, red flag indicator that the federal government should not be investing in this either. This is just a bad decision all around. I personally am one of those people where I'm like, oh, you show me all the data points for something that is a good, worthwhile project, and we all collectively as a country think, yeah, that's great. I'm all in. This is not one of those cases, guys. California, another abject failure for them. All right, let's get to our final underreported story. So I saw headlines. It would have been last night. I was sitting on my couch scrolling. Started that show Nobody Wants This, by the way. Have you guys seen that show with Kristen Bell and the rabbi? It's really good. Jake and I are hooked on it. Anyway, scrolling my phone, saw this headline that was so inaccurate, stating that a judge blocked Trump's immigration policy. And when I saw that, I was like, wait, seriously? Mass deportations are illegal? No way. No. Totally wrong. Total lies. Shit journalism there. What actually happened is that a federal judge in Maryland issued a preliminary injunction. So temporarily, the judge has blocked the Trump administration and ICE from conducting immigration enforcement in specific houses of worship. Big caveat there. So this network of like 1,400 churches, as well as a Sikh temple, filed a lawsuit arguing that the policy change, which this is a Trump policy change, which rescinds protection for people in sensitive locations like churches, that infringes upon people's religious freedoms. So backing it up to make it digestible and more easy to understand, the Obama administration put in place policies that say ICE cannot go after people in religious spaces. So when they're in a church, they're off limits. And the Trump administration rescinded that policy, which is quite ironic. I'm so aware of that, given that Obama couldn't give a shit about freedom of religion, and Trump's administration supposedly upholds that principle. Either way, the churches now, currently, these 1,400 networks, the network of 1,400 churches, is arguing that attendance is down and people are fearful to engage in their religious beliefs because ICE officials may conduct operations at the churches. My personal response to that is there's like something in the back of my mind that's always like, like somebody could come and shoot up this church any day, but this doesn't like hinder me from going because it's statistical improbability. Also, I'm not breaking any laws. If you're not breaking any laws, why are you scared to go to church? Anyway, of course, the Trump administration has then come out and said, people are going to hide out in safe spaces like churches and temples to avoid deportations, and that's not what our administration stands for. So what's happening here is there's just a preliminary injunction. That's not a ruling. All it does is revert policies back to the status quo until a ruling is issued. So this could all be overturned. We could be able, the Trump administration, is what I'm saying, the federal government, Americans, could be able to go after illegal immigrants hiding out in churches, right? That could totally be possible. There's just a preliminary injunction. So I don't know, I just felt it was like really important to get you up to speed on the story because there are some nonsense headlines out there that are claiming otherwise, and we just gotta squash that. Anyway, okay, I'm done with real stories now. Now I just want to play a round of is it real or is it satire? Which is just, if you're new here, for whatever reason, welcome. But also, is it real or is it satire is probably my favorite segment of all times. It's a segment where we react to stories and videos that make us wonder,
is it real or is it satire?
You cannot be serious!
This woman named Caroline Returns posted a video on TikTok with the caption, "I am not attracted to my husband." Listen to this.
I still stand by the fact that my husband is the ugliest man that I have ever met 5 years into our marriage. If you are single right now, it's because you want to be attracted to your partner, and that is just not realistic. I don't know how many times women on this app are going to have to say it. Find an ugly ass man and marry him. And I'm not talking about a guy that just needs a little brush up, okay? I'm talking about a terminally unattractive man. I sleep with an eye mask at night so that I have time in the morning to mentally prepare before I make eye contact with my husband. But here I am, married, and you're not, so who's laughing?
I really want to be of the mindset that this is comedy and totally satirical. That this is just a woman with way too much time on her hands who's just desperately trying to go viral on TikTok, which, by the way, she has succeeded at. But in a world where Bonnie Blue and OF creators exist, there's a big part of me that also believes that, yes, women would publicly castrate their husbands online for clicks and then go home and live off their husband's money. I think this is one of the most awful things that you could say about your husband and blast it all over TikTok. The problem is that she's kind of speaking the tiniest bit of truth. It's like when a clock is right twice a day, I agree with her that there is a very unrealistic standard that women have set for men and in dating. They all think that they're going to marry 6'5", what is it? I'm looking for a man in finance with a trust fund. 6'5", blue eyes. It's a TikTok song if you guys are not familiar. In that, I think yes. We can't all be delusional about marrying 6'5" men in finance. Not all of you guys can be me. I'm kidding. My husband just happens to be 6'5" and in finance. But anyway, I didn't marry him because he was 6'5" and in finance. I married him because he has a great personality and we really connected. And I think we should be personality and connection driven. But to my knowledge, this idea, this marriage advice, let's call it, is not only stupid, it's actually very anti-religious. The goal is not just to get married. This is the problem with her advice, is the marriage is just something to check off of your to-do list. That's not good. The point of marriage is to glorify God through your marriage. And that means liking and being attracted to one another in at least some capacity, and then having the respect for one another, not to blast that you think your husband is ugly on the internet. Also, I do think that if she's seriously lying, or she's being serious and she's not lying about being attracted or not attracted to her husband, I think there's another attractive quality about her husband. So I found the background of the video quite telling. If you look at it, she lives in California. You can see it on the license plate, with pretty big houses in her background while she's taking a walk, it looks like in the middle of the afternoon. I'm going to venture to say this woman's husband might not be physically attractive, but he has another attractive financial situation about him that she forgot to mention conveniently in her marriage advice. Now, I firmly stand by the idea, by the way, that you shouldn't be doing or doling out marriage advice until you're at least 7 years into your marriage, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to give you marriage advice. I think it's really dumb when people who are newlyweds start yapping on about marriage. Okay, you've been married for 5 seconds. Shut up. You don't know anything, okay? I don't know anything. So I don't want to give you marriage advice, but I'd like to showcase bad marriage advice and tell you not to listen to it when I see it. Before we wrap up, if you've not seen my interview with former Navy SEAL Carl Higbee, it's available on my YouTube and my Rumble channels. I've had a bit of an issue with YouTube not pushing any of my videos on super controversial topics. Not surprised, just annoyed. And this was a conversation about the Russia-Ukraine war negotiations, not from like a newsy point of view, just like a general conversation that I think you guys will very much enjoy. So if you could go and watch that and then force the algorithm to push it, that would be amazing. And if you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the American flag emoji as an homage to my 10-year America-versary? Thanks, friends! Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment about how beautiful, intelligent, and funny I am. And if you want more content, click right over here for more videos and clips of my show. I'll see you back here next time. Bye!